Anthony, you in charge.
Okay. Good morning, everybody, and thank you all very much for attending and joining in. The environmental issue, as Nico mentioned, is becoming quite a high-profile thing in our societies. My presentation today is going to be very similar to the one I did in the workshop, which we did a couple of days ago. So if you were on that workshop call, please forgive me, but I'm sure you'll pick up things that you missed on the last one. The global focus on environmental issues in our industry, and in fact in all industries, is becoming very, very high profile. And you just need to read the press and look at various press articles to see what is going on environmentally. So ASPASA identified the need to continue with the environmental audits. You all know that there was a bit of a lapse with COVID and so on. And the last audits we did were with Lizette and, of course, with Alan Cluett. So then we had a gap. So Nico decided, approached me, and we actually set up an audit or revitalized the audit because the need was determined that the industry needed an audit which was designed by the industry for the industry. So we established an environmental committee, and there was a lot of interaction with the various member companies. A lot of good ideas came forward, and it was widely accepted that our audit process that we would implement was the right thing to do. So the audit is designed, it is, to assist operations to achieve compliance. And I think that's the key of the whole thing. It's not there to come and walk in, as I said to someone the other day. We don't fly in, do a seagull visit, fly in, eat your food, shit all over you, and fly out. It's designed to help the operations achieve compliance. It also, the important part of it is the audit should equip the managers with the necessary tools to interact with the various stakeholders. That's NGOs, communities, etc., authorities, DMRE, and so on and so forth. Your environmental information will be public knowledge from now on. And people who are plant managers, and I come from that background, so I know, they're the first people in the line of firing line, and it's important that they know what to do in a case of somebody asking them and what to say. I think we could also stress here that we don't expect the plant managers to be environmental specialists. That's not a possibility, but they must have a working knowledge of what's going on. As I mentioned earlier on, it's not a punitive exercise, but a very cooperative and positive exercise that we'll be going through. We based the audit on the generic flow of operations, which is that slide that you're seeing now. And starting on the top left-hand corner, your EIAs, EMPR, mining rights, etc., all your legalities sit in that corner. The rest is what we do. Every single operation does this in one form or another. And then a very important one is the green block in the middle, is your SLPs, your communities, your neighbors, etc. And this is becoming a very, very high profile part of our operations. And I'm sure a lot of you have actually already experienced what can go wrong with communities and neighbors. So that's our flow of operations. Oh, sorry about that. Okay, so the audits will be conducted either online or physically. A number of companies have indicated that they prefer the physical audit. I did amend the program to accommodate them. So there still will be people doing online audits. Some will be doing physical, and then we'll swap it over next year So that if you did an online this year, next year you will be doing a physical audit, and vice versa. The online audit, in fact, both audits will comprise of a training module, which I think is important, a manager's presentation, and then the online, of course, is the document review, whereas the physical audit will be a document review and a site assessment. And, you know, the whole process is intended to be a sharing of information and just to ensure that people are compliant. All audits will make provision for discussions and sharing of information, as I mentioned. Folks, the weighting of the audits, and this was agreed by all parties concerned. The online one, you will see there things like EMPR, new order, mining rights, legal registers, mine plans, social labor plans. Somebody, yeah, there we go. Thank you. Your environmental performance assessment, financial provisions, water. These are all high scorers. These constitute a lot of points in your audit. And your manager's presentation, and I'd just like to sit on that just for half a second. Depending on how the manager does his or her presentation, they can cover most of both of the audits on the documentation. Things like mine plans, what they're doing, how they're doing it, what are they doing with waste, what are they doing with dust, alien vegetation, your social labor plan. All those sort of things can be included in the manager's presentation. And when we did the dry run at the Afrimat plant in Nelspruit, the presentation that was put forward was very comprehensive, and it actually made the audit a very easy process because a lot of the questions were answered by the manager when he did his presentation. I know that there's a bit of apprehension about the manager's presentation, but I encourage the guys to please do what they can and tell us, tell me what they are doing. Don't try and hide it. Be open, and if it's bad, it's bad. If it's good, it's wonderful. If it's not so good, we fix it. But if the managers know what's going on, then half the battle is already won. So that's on the online audit. Physical audit, of course, we're going to look at mining boundaries, water management, your waste control, dust, noise, those sort of things, your community engagement, alien vegetation, satellite industries, environmental awareness by the site management and staff. It's important that your staff are also on the same page and know what's going on. Again, they're not expected to be environmental specialists, but they must know what they can and should and shouldn't do. And then, of course, your correction of your compliance audit gaps. Things that you've identified yourself, things that have been identified in previous audits, what are you doing about fixing it? So I think you can see by this, by the weighting, that's generally pretty much what will go on in audit. This was just a picture that one of the ISH audits last year, and why I put this in, this is a well-run operation, looks very nice. Dust is under control, but if you look in the background, you'll see how communities are encroaching on operations, and a number of people have got those sort of issues happening, around their operations. So the online audit, the confidentiality, which is also something that has been questioned, all the information that is viewed will be treated confidentially. I'm bound by a confidentiality agreement with ASPASA, and I don't retain any of the documents that I view, and no information will be shared without the express permission of the host company. So thank you, guys. You can relax. I'm not going to go and distribute your information. The online audit. Managers must have a good understanding of their documentation and compliance. They must know what's happening in their mining area. and the surrounding areas. Remember that you influence and you have an impact on what's happening around you. Your stakeholder management, which is very important. We will be focusing on that. Neighbors, interested and affected parties, etc. Folks, please excuse me. We've got quite a few slides, so I'm going to go quite quickly. Please make a note if you want to ask questions at a later stage. What you will need in your online audit is your relevant documentation, all your appointments, your legal appointments, risk assessments, etc., the knowledge of your satellite industries. And just on that, please understand that you are, as the person in charge of an operation and the environmentally responsible person, you are responsible for what happens on your site. Even if that little ready-mix plant or asphalt plant or brick plant has got a fence around it, and you think that they're not part of you, if it's on your mining area, you are responsible for any degradation, pollution, or damage to the environment that might come from that specific operation. So it's important that you know what's going on there. Please share your achievements and actions. Very often the small improvements make an enormous impact, and we like to see what is going on with that. Folks, I'm going to put this out again. Please, the managers must not delegate the presentation to someone else, because it is important that they demonstrate to me their environmental knowledge and understanding. It doesn't help you if you get your specialist or your consultant to do this presentation. You're not going to score the right marks, and it's going to impact on your end result. You need to understand your reports relating to noise and dust levels. It was very interesting. We had a session with the chief inspector of the DMR, and this came up where copy-paste reports, and managers didn't know what the contents of those reports were. So they'll be looking at it as well. So it's important that you understand what those reports are, and that they are accurate. So please make sure. Environmental complaints, issues, how did you resolve those complaints? This is all important things, and this comes back to the neighbors and stakeholders that surround you and interested and affected parties. So on the online audit, look at the EMP performance assessment, social labor plan, and the review, stakeholder management, mine plans and boundaries. Do you know where they are? Dust and noise, we've mentioned that. Your quarterly reports, your 2024 milestones, waste management, recycling, all that sort of thing, end user certificates, water licenses or authorizations, what you're doing, how much water are you using, etc., etc. And then environmental training and awareness of management staff and various stakeholders. Your environmental appointments, your rehabilitation plans, financial provisions, submission of your EMPR, financial provision, DMR 128 quarterly reports. These are all things that you should be doing on a regular basis. So, show me what you are doing, show me that it has been done, and your audit is very easy. Any other topics which the manager may consider relevant or would like to share, I'd be delighted to see them. It just creates, just gives us a very nice picture of what is going on that site and the competency of the person concerned. This is just a little picture of a rural glass recycling project out in the eastern Mpumalanga. Very successful operation, which is done in the community, and it's created a lot of employment and cleaned up the area. So just something to think about. Again, a manager's presentation is a platform to showcase the operation, and please put as much information in there. This is a case of more is better, and I've already covered the dry run that I spoke about. I think let's just, are there any questions on the online audit at this point? Okay, and then we'll carry on. So the physical audit, inspection will be done with the management and staff. Staff will be interviewed. Just going back to the on-site inspection, it's not really an inspection, it's more an assessment and a walkabout. It's going to be quite intense because I'm going to be looking at the various aspects, and I know where people hide bad things. So please understand it will be quite an intense visit. I'll also be speaking to the staff to see whether they understand what the legal requirements are, what the environmental requirements are, and do they buy into this in the general appearance of the site, obviously. Mining boundaries, water management, your stormwater management, your water usage, runoff and pollution control, all those sort of things. And these are things that you do have in place. If you don't, you should. So, we'll just be seeing that how good or how bad it is. In your flood control measures, 100-year flood lines, etc. And folks, this is all, a lot of this information is in your EMPR. So if you don't know where it is, go and have a look. It certainly is there. Just a nice dust bucket. That's also something which we've often spoken about. Get the right dust buckets in the right places. Waste management is important, especially your hazardous waste, old oil, rubber, etc. Dust control, dust suppression, your silica contents. These are all things that have big impacts on your site and on your neighbors. Your noise control and monitoring, again, there are the surveys. Are these surveys correct? Are they accurate? Is it a copy paste? Do you know what is contained in that document? And do you understand it? And are you taking corrective actions in the case of non-conformances? And then the old problem that we've all had is your blasting. Your vibrations, your monitoring, fly rock, noise impacts, etc. Cracked houses, you know the story as well as I do. If you've had issues, please tell me about it. Don't try and hide it. We will find out. It's not about what has happened. It's about what do you do to prevent it happening again and what was the corrective action. Your stakeholders and communities, have you had meetings? Do you have groups, etc.? Do you have a website where they can access it? Do you have a WhatsApp group? Those sort of things. Then your alien vegetation control. This will be, if you don't know where that is, go and have a look at your performance assessment. It should be in there, the identification of alien vegetation and what are you doing about it. As I mentioned earlier, satellite industries, those are generally places where there's a lot of sins that nobody knows about. Ready mix plants have, the discharge from the trucks, etc. You need to know what's going on there, and they need to be on the same page as you are. Then an important one as well is the management and resolution of complaints. What do you do with them when you get them? Because it's not a case of if you'll get them, it's when you get them and what are you going to do. This was just for interest's sake. You can see from this pie chart, and this was an ASPASA document, the complaints from neighbors and stakeholders. And you'll see that, dust is a big one. Noise and vibrations is a bigger one. Trucks and truck management is a very big one. And works affecting highways is next. So, there's a lot that and it's across the board, the industry, everyone gets this. So, what are you doing about it? Then we'll also be looking at hazardous material storage, your bundles, your diesel, oil, paint stores, that sort of thing, traffic control and the impact on neighbors and communities. Is there spillage on the roads? Is there dust? Is there congestion, etc.? These are things that you should have already addressed if you're running your operation the way most guys are. And then your ecological areas, your sensitive ones. There are operations running in very sensitive ecological areas where there are threatened species. We'll be looking at that to see what is going on there and how you are managing this to have the least impact on the environment that is possible. And then correction of gaps identified in previous audits. It does not necessarily have to be an ASPASA audit. It can be your internal one. It can be your own one. It can be a consultant that did one. You've done a performance assessment as well. We need to see what you've done with those gaps that were identified. Yeah, disposal of waste, your end user certificates. Remember that it's the cradle to grave principle. You are responsible for what you've created up until it has been disposed of correctly and in the correct place and manner. So we're going to have a look at that. The waste management on site, and then any recycling projects, that sort of thing. That'll all be very positive if you've got those going. So in general, the scoring is going to reflect the level of compliance as per the day of the audit.
Anthony, just please check your sound. You've disappeared.
Am I back?
Yeah, you're back. Yeah, where were you? Did you go to the toilet?
No, it just disappeared.
Okay, carry on.
I went before. I now got caught with that once before. Okay, folks, sorry about that. All right, in general, the scoring that's, as I said, will reflect what we find on the day of the audit. If you've done things previously or intend to do things, you've got to include that so that we've got proof and you can show us what it is that you have done, what it is you're going to do, because otherwise I can't give you the credit for that. What you'll also find is that your scores can potentially differ significantly from previous audits. The format has changed, the emphasis of the audit has changed. I think in the manner in which it's going to be done will certainly be very different from what Lizette did, and a little bit different, quite a bit different from what Alan did. We've highlighted different things. So your emphasis should be on achieving compliance. Let's get that sorted out, and then we can start looking at getting the good scores and celebrating successes here. I think, but it's important that the compliance aspect is highlighted. All right, so please make use of the audit to achieve your compliance if you're not already compliant. If I am able to assist you to make it better, I will be very happy to do so. Just remember that your existing information on file from the previous about-face audits can be used, and in fact should be used as a basis for the new audit. We've added into it, but a lot of what you've got on file is going to be requirement. So just update that information, make sure that it is current, and then you'll be good. And then in conclusion, the audits are there to assist site managers and their teams to achieve environmental compliance. And with that, I'm that's a conclusion. If there are questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Anthony, are you there?
Hi, who's that?
Yes, sorry, it's
Jer-
Jeremy.
Hello, Jeremy. Hi.
Are you well?
Yes, thank you. And you?
Good, good. Just a quick question from my side. And it's something I've been asked by a couple of individuals. How do we compare the scoring between a online audit and a physical audit? How are we going to tally though between those two in terms of a performance year on year?
Jeremy, what I was thinking of doing is to separate the two. It'll be it's not going to be fair to compare it because it's two completely separate parts, separate audits. So what you're really going to have to do, I think, is when the guys do an online audit, that will be treated as an online audit, and then biannually we'll compare those scores. And when we do the physical audit, biannually compare those. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
Great. Yes, I think it sort of answers it for me to let the guys know. And then we'd obviously then only every second year have sort of possibly awards once they've gone through both processes, if I'm not mistaken.
I think what we can do, and this is how I would like to do it. It's open to comment, is to have two sections, to have online awards, and then to have physical awards as well. For annually, I'd like to recognize people that have achieved well and that have, sort of really gone out of their way to make the audit good. So I would like to have 2 awards per annum.
Fantastic. I think that sounds fair enough, and I think as we get the ball rolling year after year, the guys will get to understand it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the managers are a bit apprehensive with the extra bits and pieces they have to put together. But I think it's a great initiative to get that presentation from the managers to ensure that they know what's going on their site. But I know there are quite a bunch of individuals that are quite nervous and apprehensive about it and are querying it. But I think it's a good thing. So looking forward to the orders this year. Thank you.
I think just to on that point, Jeremy, as well, and thank you for your comments there. Yes, the managers are not really guys that want to get too involved in this. They've got a hell of a lot to do. They mustn't view this as being penalized or being put in the corner and told to.
Anthony, you gone again? I think what Anthony's trying to say, Jeremy, is that the people mustn't see this as a punitive way of dealing with it. What we have found is that when the communities rock up at the gate and there's no environmentalist nearby, they demand stuff. And I think that's the reason why we went for the manager to know and have his presentation ready and have it all set out. So I think that's the one thing. Brian, you wanted to say something or ask a question? Carry on. Brian, you can carry on. Just waiting for
You're
Anthony
muted,
to come.
Brian.
Yeah.
There you go.
Sorry, man. If we're going away from the scoring system and it's a new system that we're starting and it's all based on compliance, can we not then do away with the physical scoring part of it and go to the compliance where you stand, as a compliance? Previously, the scoring can be very skewed and give you a false sense of security. But if you're based on where you stand compliance-wise.
I think, Brian, yes, probably a very good idea. It's difficult to assess somebody without actually getting a score. The audit document is structured like that. So, but we're not going to. I'm not going to overemphasize the scores. It'll be more what more what are the gaps and where are you not compliant, And then, as Jeremy said, once we've got the ball rolling and people have got used to it, we can start putting moving towards a score-based audit.
Okay, that's fine.
Thanks,
Anthony,
Brian.
Anthony, I haven't put my hand up because it takes half an hour for me to get the hand. Just, I think what Brian is raising has been raised quite a few times in the past, where the people are saying, do we really want a competition or do we want a training session? And I think what is raised is quite important, but I think you've just answered it very well in the sense that actually we should get away from audit because it's got a negative connotation.
Yeah,
We should actually say legal compliance. And we're saying to the people that are saying, oh, we're not going to participate this year. We want the people to be trained, everybody. And to just take it one step further, I'm trying to see if we can get through the engineering council. What do you call those points? CPD points, no? Yeah.
Yes.
CPD.
Yes.
So what we would like to say at some stage is that maybe next year, that if you sat in on a ASPASA audit for the day and the auditor signs it off, that you could get a CPD point for that session if you're a qualified engineer.
Yes.
So that will also bring up the quality of our audits and the training that takes place at the site with those people. Thanks, Anthony. Brian is on again.
No, I'm finished. That was my question.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Are there any other questions and comments?
Can we just ask Brian to take his hand down? That's why I don't put mine up, because I normally forget to take it off or take it. There we are. Thanks.
Okay.
Guys, please, Anthony, if I may just interrupt, because I'm getting all the emails on this side. You're also getting, some companies saying this, that, and so forth. Let's not be negative about this whole environmental thing. It's crucial. It's crucial. If we don't get this right, we're going to have major problems with the communities, with the government, with everybody. So this is an educational process. It's a training process. Let's get away from the past where people were crapped on, if I could call it that. Sorry for the word, crapped on because they didn't do well, and then the companies would also, fight with them and say, "Oh, you're not doing well. Plant so and so is doing better." I think let's just get away from that for a year or two, and let's just start getting people to understand what this whole subject matter is, because it's a very complicated subject matter, I find.
Yeah, it is a specialist field, and it as we've said a couple of times. Hello, Charlene.
Hi there.
As we've said a number of times, we don't expect people to be environmental specialists, but they must have a working knowledge of what is required of them, and that is our goal at this stage, is to assist the managers and their staff and their teams to get there. So, folks, I think with that message, if there are no other questions, I'm going to hand back to Nico.
Thanks, Anthony, and sorry for doing a lot of talking on your session, but I just need to get this sorted out. I said the other day that I had to develop a document when we went to go and see some of the CEOs, and it was very clear that in 1999, the industry, and those days the CEOs were involved in ASPASA, they decided that to be a member, you have to undergo in a health and safety audit and an environmental audit. And that's where the whole thing started, because they said you can't criticize down the road if your place isn't fixed yourself. So I think that's where it comes from. We're trying. I'm finding that we're slipping back a bit, and we need to get back to that standard that the industry needs. And it built a lot of confidence with the government departments. The DMR and these places really do appreciate it, that we're also helping. You're not saying that we're not going to get a 54 or a 55. That's not what we're saying. We're just saying, yes, like our members are almost probably better off than the other guys who are not. So to end there, Anthony, we can talk again later. I think we're going to ask Charlene. She's an environmental boffin. I'm always very nervous when I talk to her because she knows exactly what carries on. We also use Charmaine. She's an associate member. When Anthony gets stuck and he's not sure, he contacts Charmaine. And if I'm not sure, I refer everything to Charmaine. So she's actually our backup. So if anybody wants to say, oh, well, these guys are too light, Charmaine is the boffin. She's been working in this field for many years, and she worked for huge big companies. So Charmaine, with that introduction, you can carry on. Thank you.
It's actually Charlene.
Okay, sorry, man.
Thank you very much. Can I share my screen?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Nothing yet.
Nothing yet. Okay.
Nothing
we can
yet. You
see
got
what's happening.
your circle there with your name at the bottom, but not seeing the pictures yet. And it's Charlene. It's sorry, Charlene. I just called you Charmaine, but I can hear you battling. I hear kadoof, kadoof, kadoof. So
Okay. Is it
kick it
still not
another.
in?
Kick it again.
Okay.
There we are.
Ah,
We can just
brilliant.
increase it now. It's very small.
Okay. Right. Good. Can you see that?
We can see it. Yeah. I don't know if you want to make it bigger. I don't know how you do that, Anneke. There we are.
Okay. Good. Okay. I'm doing full screen, so I can't make it bigger than that. Good morning, everybody. Sorry. Yeah, the ARC's open here in Eco Partners, so let's try and get through this as quickly as possible. In terms of changes in environmental regulations, there's quite a few happening, a few things happening. So what I'm going to try and cover, and I'm sorry I couldn't attend the rest of the meeting this morning. I was engaged in another meeting with the government departments trying to sort out what the next change is and how we're going to deal with it. So in terms of the what affects ASPASA, I was trying to put things together that I think is critical for you to know. Am I clear enough, Anthony? Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's fine. It's Charlene. Yeah, everything, you just go for it.
Okay. Right. So you know about this. We presented it last year. The change in the legal requirement that affects ASPASA most significantly relates to the change in your financial provision that you need to make. Now, in terms of the financial provision, in terms of the NPRDA, what you used to do for the NPRDA, it was a simple closure report that you had to submit, and you would do your financial provision on a template format. So in terms of the requirements, it was first 19 June 2021, and they've extended it this year to 19 June 2022. So if you had a mining right that was issued prior to 20 November 2015, the following applies to you. You now need to provide an audit report, and this audit report must contain an annual rehabilitation plan, a final rehabilitation plan, a risk assessment report, and in this risk assessment report there must be an assessment process of all your activities, including your management activities, costing of all your activities, and then monitoring, auditing, and reporting requirements. So the scope for your financial provision, now you guys would have known this as your quantum. So in terms of your quantum, what you would have done is you would have just submitted an annual update of the cost on a template format, and based on that template format, you would have submitted extra money if needed to top up your quantum requirements. That has now changed. It is now under a different regulation. That regulation was managed under the NPRDA. It's changed now to NEMA, so it's now under the National Environmental Management Act. And in terms of the National Environmental Management Act, for your financial provision, you now need to submit a whole lot more, and it must be viewed by your interested and affected parties. So these were the typical previous calculations that you were used to. And based on that, you would then have a subtotal and a total, and you would use that to top up your financial provision or your quantum. What's happened now is that in terms of your annual rehabilitation plan, it differs from your quantum calculation in that previously you had a final rehabilitation plan, like point number 2 here, a final rehabilitation or decommissioning plan. So in addition to that, in terms of the new regulations, you must have an annual rehabilitation plan. So you need to calculate per year how much you're going to do in terms of rehabilitation. What are you going to fix? How much of what are you going to move towards a closure plan at the end of life of mine? Then you need to have a final closure or decommissioning plan. This final closure or decommissioning plan must specify a sustainable end land use. Now, that is quite critical to consider. If you do find a sustainable end land use, you can reduce your quantum cost or your rehabilitation cost significantly. And there's a variety of end land uses that you can come up with to facilitate a cost reduction in your quantum. And then in terms of remediation or latent impacts, this was not in the regulations before, but if there is something latent, if there is something that's left behind, for example, a hole in the ground, if a hole in the ground is left behind, then that hole in the ground has residual environmental impacts, and that has to be calculated, and that calculation then contributes to a closure cost that you cannot sign over to anybody. You will either keep paying it or you have to submit enough money to sign it over to the department that will then deal with it that way. So there will be an amount of money in your closure plan or in your cost calculations that you will not receive back at the end of life. So if we then look at the financial provision, simultaneous with the financial provision, what happened is that in 11 June 2021, Regulation 34 was amended. Now, Regulation 34 in terms of NEMA actually looks at what changes is happening in terms of environmental authorizations. Because the EMPR is an environmental authorization, that requirement is now valid for you too. So it was said, Regulation 34 was amended by stating that the holder of an environmental authorization, and that's you too, must, for the period during which the environmental authorization, EMPR or closure plan, in case of a closure activity, remain valid, ensure compliance with such EMPR, with the closure plan, and make sure that it's audited, and that audit must be submitted to the relevant competent authority. Now, if you go further in the regulations, it then says it must be submitted in terms of, the audit report must be submitted in terms of Appendix 7 of NEMA. And Appendix 7 of NEMA is prescribed, and it then prescribes who must submit it, how often it must be submitted, and the associated risks. It also prescribes that it must be available for viewing to interested and affected parties. It must also go onto your website. So it is quite wide-ranging. It is quite a wide-ranging change in regulations. And then we luckily got away from at least 10 years in terms of the regulations, so that part has been repealed. Then what also came into being is that any activity, listed activity 21E was declared, and it states that any activity, including the operation of that activity, which the minister has issued an exemption for, becomes part of this listing notice. So what that means is, for example, I know a lot of you have worked in many cases with borrow pits that was excluded from mining activities because of one or the other regulation. So, for example, there's an exemption because the borrow pit was made for a national road, or there's an exemption because the borrow pit was for the purpose of the owner of the land, or whatever the exemption might be. The implication of this is now that those borrow pits now need financial provisioning. Not only that, those financial provisioning then needs to be audited. Not only that, it needs to be, so it must be audited on an annual basis, and then it needs to be closed. So if it hasn't been closed before 19 June 2022, which is in the next 4 months, it means that you are liable in terms of closure cost, and even though it was an exempted activity, you are liable for closure costs. So there's a 4-month window in which you need to see what to do for those areas that were previously exempted. Then, in terms of the closure cost regulations, ASPASA has provided some feedback for low-risk commodities. We, as ASPASA, consider the commodities that we deal with as low-risk commodities. And in terms of Regulation 7, it means that it should be possible to calculate the low-risk commodities using a template, similar to what we've used before. But the current application prevents us from using the low-risk commodity clause because it excludes mining rights. So there's 2 specific issues with this. We haven't seen this prescribed template or spreadsheet or the master rates. And the Regulation 8 requirements incur specific costs. Now, all of this must be implemented by June 2022, and let me just explain what that means. So, June 2022, if you have an annual audit for your mine, as required by Regulation 34, in environmental audit, what it means is that audit must now be done according to the requirements of this new listed activity requirements. So what happens if you did financial provision auditing before, the financial provision auditing will differ, number 1, but number 2, you now need to calculate the financial provision based on the new criteria provided and not based on the template that you used to have. So that's quite a mouthful, and you must do it in that space. You must do it so that you could calculate the cost that you're going to incur to rehabilitate the site, not based on the template, based on your own rates and your own risks and your own calculations. This must be implemented. So whenever your financial year end, it must be implemented within 3 months of your financial year end. So if your financial year ends in June, it means in 3 months after June, you would need to provide this the new updated financial provision cost calculations. Then the general requirements, these audits must be done by an independent person with the relevant criteria, and you need to submit your annual rehabilitation plan, your final rehabilitation plan, and a risk assessment report. And there's very specific regulations according to which these reports must be related. So your annual rehabilitation plan must look according to Appendix 3, your final rehabilitation plan Appendix 4, and your risk assessment report must look like Appendix 5. of your NEMA requirements. So it's quite a big change that's happening, and even though we hoped there would have been any relief, that relief doesn't seem to be forthcoming for ASPASA. We just hope that you're geared towards implementing this requirement within the next 4 months, so that you can align yourself to the latest legal requirements. It carries with it a 10 million rand fine, plus the cost of rehabilitation. It's quite heavy. And then I would recommend that the first thing you do is, in terms of your current EMPR, you calculate the costs that you are doing in terms of your EMPR. If you are clearing soil, then calculate how much it costs to clear the soil. If you are putting back vegetation, calculate how much it costs to put back the calculation. In short, if your EMPR has line items, calculate each of the line items. Then, based on that, determine the risk, and that builds into an annual rehabilitation plan. Use your social and labor plan to build in training and emergency drills that then shows that you're mitigating. Make sure that you compare last year with this year. You guys are doing it anyway in terms of your regulation 4.2 maps that you submit, survey maps that you submit to the department, and then do an environmental performance assessment. If you create a checklist from all these things and you verify, which is what Anthony is urging you to do, if you create a checklist of what your EMPR requires, what your legal requirements require, then, and you know where you stand, and you audit these like Anthony is going to do, that would help you a great deal towards compliance when you need to do this through an independent person, and it must be viewed by interested and affected parties. So, these are my details if you need to ask any further questions, and then I will ask if there are questions now. Right, I see 2 hands. ASPASA audit, that must be Anthony. Anthony?
Yeah, Charlene, yes, thank you very much for that. I just wanted to sort of add on there and make a comment. I don't know if people quite realize the impact that this new regulation is going to have. It's enormous. So guys, please don't wait until June. You've had a year already, more than a year. You know, you're going to end up paying a lot of money, and unfortunately, there's just not enough people to be able to do all these things. It is a very specialized function, so you know, rather get going quicker than sooner than later.
Yes, Shalane, sorry, you said that we have to implement this 3 months after our financial year end. Okay, so the regulations come into effect in June 2022. So if our financial year end is by end of February, it means only after February 2023, 4 months from that, or 3 months from that, we have to implement. Okay.
You muted, Charlene.
Muted, Charlene.
Sorry. So yes, you're correct, Marty. It means by no later than May 2023 must you submit the final reports. Guys, please note that these reports, as a person that does these, that on a regular basis do reports, on a regular basis, these reports do not take a month or 2 to put together. Understand, 30 days of that is public participation. It's not debatable, it's not choosable, that must happen. And then the other thing that you must consider is that the calculation of costs is going to give you a huge shock. You're probably going to calculate the costs, and then you're going to realize, wait a minute, I can do things differently, because then you're going to see which things are costing you the most, and you will change your plan. And based on that, you will have to recost. So, and that's an iterative process. So yes, you can save yourself serious money, millions, if you do it right, but you're going to have to do the hard work to get there. It's not going to be a simple calculation. It's not a template.
Any more questions, comments? We can always ask at the end, or Charlene has put her details down and we have it too. So you can write me an email. I'll send it on to her and she'll come back to you if you didn't catch it. Right, Charlene, thanks a lot. And thanks for that again. That's why I said up front, you know, all these things that make me nervous because I don't know all these things, and it's very complicated. It's not just a easy walk in the park. So yeah, it's getting more difficult to mine than, yeah, some days you want to run away. But anyway, thanks for that. Then I'm going to ask Brian Weevil, who's going to be our next speaker. He's going to talk a bit about water management. I think Anneke has got the presentation. Anneke, if you don't mind, you can put it on and then Brian can take over and carry on. Brian, you ready?
Yeah, I'm just trying to share. Yeah.
Can you see the screen?
No, we can see nothing on the screen except the names. There's your name now. There we are.
I'll use stormwater.
Yes, on stormwater. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Here you go.
Thanks, Anneke.
Hi, Anneke, if you can just sort of maximize it if you can.
Brian, your voice has got a bit of a hollow sound. It sounds as if you're talking from under the water or in a cave. Is there a way that you could get nearer to the laptop or something to that effect, please?
Is that better?
Much better, much better.
Okay, I'm right here. Yeah, good morning all. If I start stammering, it's because the lady before me has put the fear into me, but I'll do my best. Anneke, if you can go to the next slide. I was asked to give a short presentation on water management and what we term good practice. It may differ from site to site. I do believe that in our industry, we need to share these best practice so that we all, we can all align ourselves to proper management of our water resources. Thanks, Anneke. Right, I just want to start by saying I'm not a boffin. I may have a lot of experience, but I'm not a boffin. So what you see here, again, like I said, is going to differ from site to site, but it works for us. And I take it everybody else employs the same methods. Historically, we've employed good practice techniques and not necessarily designed engineering processes, which would require civil designs. I know it's a requirement in your water licenses, and you can get the designs of your berms or dams checked to make sure that they're working properly. What is important though is whatever system you use is the maintenance of these systems and the constant reevaluation to ensure their effectiveness. Now I'm talking from our side, so please bear with me. To determine what kind of system you use, there's a number of factors to consider. Obviously, your water flow patterns. I term it the volume and speed of water to control. Again, worst case scenario. If it is a containment system, those are your dams and your ponds. Is it a diversion or a barrier? These are berms, line trenches, and canals. Is it a filtration system? In the old language, with Alan, we term them seepage berms. Are they buffers to control the speed of the water and to control erosion? And then most importantly is the topography of your site. The topography will influence the type and the size of the system used. Next slide. Please tell me if I'm going too fast. I'll give you just a brief overview of what each site entails. If you have a look on the left, there's a number of berms, different size rock. We use this specifically in an area of high water flow. This comes water that's diverted from around the pit and also to control the roads. And we run it down through a system of berms. It serves as a buffer and a containment and a seepage. It'll slowly work its way through down into the natural vegetation. Next slide. Just back one slide, please. Right, we have a number of these berms on quite a large area. Again, once you've analyzed your flow patterns, you can determine where your water is flowing off the site. It's a very simple and effective means of filtering the water and also stopping the speed. If you have a look at the front of this runoff area, it's lined with larger rocks. This is mostly to catch all the debris, but it doesn't flow off the property. And it flows through gently to the bottom. Again, we have filter stone, different fractions of stone. And you can actually see from both sides how readily effective it is. You can see the fine material that has stayed behind. And in theory, your clean water will run through. Again, whatever sediment traps at the bottom, we can take it out, put it back onto the stockpiles. And it's a relatively simple way to control your water. Next slide, please. Again, he has one under construction, and again to the right on another side, we employ it at a number of sites, and we find it works very effectively. Again, this is our preference, and does not necessarily mean that everybody has to or would like to use the system. Next slide, please. Right, our normal berms, I think all of you are aware of it. We have our normal berms on the side of our roads and stockpile areas. The one on the right is a very simple measure. Our roads are sloped to the left to accommodate runoff. These are just little barriers that slows down the speed of the water. And again, we'll just keep on filtering it. Again, it works for us. Next slide, please. Again, a number of different berms. Each serves the same purpose. One to divert the water and one to prevent water leaving the site. Next slide, please. This here specifically is on a small culvert or bridge over a drainage feature. There's a slope to the rear and to the front of this. And again, we term this is seepage berm. Again, works very effective if you have a look at the fines that it's retaining. Again, it's a simple method, easily to maintain, and it serves the purpose. Next slide. Again, seepage berms and erosion control, all part of your water management. Again, to know your flow patterns and to know exactly where your water runs off on your site. And the runoff and your flow patterns will determine what kind of preventative measure you're going to use. Here again, simple method of controlling the erosion is old concrete, shot rock. There's many other methods of doing it, old tires, whatever your preference is. Next slide. Again, analyzing your flow patterns and containment. This is, again, if you're looking at catchment dams, know that it triggers something in your water license. So not always the desired method, but again, it's dependent on the amount of water that's leaving your site or contained on your site. Again, what we find is a good measure to divert the water into these catchment dams. Next slide. Again, just simple methods. Again, determined by the speed of your water, the amount of water that's going to be contained. On the right-hand side is a very effective little method. It's your normal weir system. This particular one is down from a small storage dam that we use for dust suppression. Obviously, in the raining water collects a lot of water, and any overflow runs down, and we can contain it, and it just gradually settles and seeps, and allow for a small amount of water to flow over. That's the end of my slide presentation. Again, understanding that everyone has their own preferences. We find this works very well for us. But again, as I said, it's important that as an industry, we share these best practices. There are sites that might have a far more effective measure than what we've got. Not too many questions. Yes, Charlene, I see you were the first one.
Brian, I just want to congratulate you. I think it's very well done. I love that you have that many preventative measures to have erosion control, because the moment you start dealing with erosion, you deal with a whole lot more issues. So I think it was very well done. I would like to commend you.
Thank you very much. Yes, Anthony.
Brian, yes, thank you. And yeah, Charlene stole my thunder there. I was also going to say that. But what I'd like to just sort of underline with the people on the rest of the folk on our call is what you've done there is simple, it's effective, and it hasn't cost you a fortune. So what I said in my presentation is simple things make a big difference sometimes. I think this is a beautiful example of that. And please keep it up. Yeah, I look forward to seeing those sites. It's really quite exciting. Thank you, Brian.
No, thank you very much.
Any other comments to Brian? Great job, Brian. You know what we find in ASPASA is that there's people that really understand things, and I think that's the trick, is to try and find them and use them in the whole process. Everybody can learn from them. And Brian has been a champion for many years now. I'm not going to talk too much unless there's more questions, comments. I'm going to ask Anneke, let us go to the next speaker.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, Letitia, shall I continue your presentation?
Thank you very much, Nico and Anthony and Anneke. I'm just quickly going to switch on my camera that you at least know what I look like. Otherwise, it feels like you're speaking to this round dot with an L on it. Okay, that's it. I think if you hear communities, most of you want to run away. But I would like to share how AfriMat manages it. And it is not a one-person management process. If you're going to think you give it to one individual or a consultant outside of your industry to run with it by themselves, you're going to fail. And I want to say that up front, that it is a combined effort between HR, the environmental, if you have consultants, environmental, and also your SLP consultants or your internal SLP and your safety department. Thanks, Anneke. Go to the next one. So just to give you an idea, geographically, we deal with all these municipal areas. We've added Northwest recently. Also with all the chiefs, all the indunas in all those areas, not just the mining paternities, but also the other operations. So you can see it's quite a vast area and different regions and different cultures you deal with. Next one. Thanks, Anneke. So how we go about it, and like Brian said, this works for us. It's up to you what you want to add or subtract, is to identify the community risks, the size of the community, the distance of the community in relation to the mine, the socio-economic profile of the community, the history of the community itself, community leaders, cultures, existing forums, formal and informal. Very important to also understand the informal processes in that community. And then the history of the community in relation to the mine. If you buy an existing mine, or if you want to start a new mine or any operation for that matter, not just mining, and just for everybody on the call, NEMA is not just for mines. Many people think it is, and it isn't. So all public participation activities, historic, if you can find, the EIA processes, previous EMPs, the mine works program, the water use or general authorization, specialist studies, the social labor plan of the previous occupant, HR recruitment strategies, contractors in the area, and new and existing mines and operations. So that's whether you do a new activity or new operation, or if you're going to buy a mine within a community. Thanks, Anneke. And just from that, you then populate a risk matrix. And if you only look at those items that we have given, you'll see that many of the operations falls then within the red and high risk zone. But you cannot just look at the previous slide activities. And we update this every month through consultation with HR in the different operations, with SLP leaders in the area, with the operation themselves, and with the community leaders. If you can go to the next one, please, Anneke. You'll see then, if you engage so frequently, this moves up and down. So the red zone now has reduced considerably, but that does not mean it is the end of our community challenges or our community engagements. You cannot stop your community engagements, but what you can do is manage how often you're going to engage with these communities. So the green areas normally we engage with them about twice a year. The red zones is about 4 times a year, and then the yellow zone is 4 times a year, and then the red zone is every single month there is a forum that we sit with. Next one, please. So community information feed, what do we do? What do we share with them? So very important to share with them the social and labor plan implementation, your HRD, your LED project, and also in there to share with them if you have difficulties. We all have gone through economic difficulties, to go back to the community and say, sorry guys, we cannot do the ABET training for the next 6 months because of our difficulties, or the portable skills training. Inform them ahead of time. Then your social corporate initiatives in relation to the community needs, distribute job adverts, distribute bursary internships, learnership adverts, the possible jobs for local SMMEs, assist in rebuilding trust and ensuring there's a good flow of information. All safety, health and environmental matters that they encounter, they are the recipient of our exposures. So we have to tell them if something is going to change, or if we want new activities. like we want to put up a block plant at one of our mines, we would then engage with the community. And then the important one, the 500-meter blasting radius and the consultation and participation there. Also the 100-meter mining within 100 meter of any structure. And then a very important one, procurement days. And as you can see, many of these community feeds are not environmental related, but you're going to need to have that relationship to go to them and ask them if you can put a new block plant up, or if you can put up a mining premises in their area. So if you don't keep these community information feeds open regularly, how are you then going to approach your community effectively when you really need something new that's going to trigger one of the public participation processes? I think that's my last slide, Anneke. If there's any questions, this is just, again, please don't try and do it by yourself. And if you use consultants, keep close to them, that they don't make promises on your behalf that you're not committed to. Thank you very much.
Anthony, is it you, Joe?
Yeah, Letitia, thank you very much for that. And I think, folks, we must, there's a lot of incredibly good information on that presentation. Just one or two things. Letitia mentioned on a few occasions, if you use consultants, make sure you know what they're doing. The responsibility must stay with you, and it's important that, you know, that consultant must, you've got to have your hand right. I mean, they've really got to be, there's got to be a synergy there. And you know, so that you don't have promises made that you can't keep or that are unachievable. Yeah. And then the other thing was the interaction with those communities. I think it is absolutely critical what you said, Letitia, that it's done on that regular basis, both on the informal and formal forums. Yeah, fantastic, and thank you very much for sharing that.
Thanks. And just one thing, if you use a consultant, they must get used to the mining phases.
Yeah.
The guys at the premises, because that face you can speak to helps much more than an email or a WhatsApp.
Yeah. That personal contact is absolutely critical. There was something else now. I've forgotten what it was I was going to say. Oh yes, I think Nico and just for the forum quickly, we've got some really good community projects and people that are very experienced. I take Jeremy, for example. He's done a lot of work on that. So maybe on the next meeting, Nico, we can do another slot with this and get Jeremy as well. I just put it out there. Thanks, Letitia.
Thanks. Charlene?
Thank you very much, Letitia. I just want to commend you. I think that's really quite brilliant. I would just, in terms of your, you made a very specific comment in that the things that you share with the community is not all environmental, but when you need to get environmental authorization, it is the things that's going to stop you from progressing. It is the things that would prevent that authorization to come through, because it would be the stuff that will have to go into your EIA, because that's what your community comment on. So I think it's a very valuable comment. I want to recommend one thing, as we are in a big forum. When you deal with your community, make sure they know the door to knock on to get access to information or to provide information to you. So, for example, there would be a procurement door. So somebody needs to know where they need to go so that they can drop off a tender. Now, I know you've got processes, but when you deal with public participation and you have a slide or a 10 slides that says, in the event of procurement, this is the person to contact. In the event of community liaison, this is the person to contact. In the event of projects, corporate projects, this is the person to contact. You probably will have a much better reception by the time you want to get an environmental authorization, because it allows you a license to contract. It allows you to communicate with people on an equal basis because they feel they have access to you too. It's just a comment.
Thanks, Shalane. Just maybe a last point on what you just mentioned. Also, don't let them come to the gate and they give you a request and you don't get back to them, because that is when things go haywire as well. So in those events of a procurement, get that procurement person and follow up that they did contact the individual, because that's also where we sometimes fail. We take too long to get back to them and then they come and close your gate. Yeah, so thank you very much, Nico.
You know, sorry, can I just chip in here? Letitia, what you've just said is absolutely crucial. That feedback and timeous feedback, it takes away a lot of the issues. And I've witnessed where the feedback hasn't been done properly and it's ended up as a disaster. So yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Letitia. Thanks, Anthony. Yo, you know, the quality of what we get when we attend these meetings is just unbelievable. In some cases, in the old days, I used to pay to go and listen to these stories, and here the people are working with us in the place. And now, thank you very, very much to the speakers. Thank you, Letitia. I'm starting with you. Very good presentation. Brian, you're a star. Charlene, you as always also a star. Anthony, you're a star. So Anthony's just put something in my mind, because I'm always looking for something to do. You won't believe it. But a community forum training workshop. And let me try and explain that. Maybe not an environmental classified meeting, but maybe we get the Jeremys and the Letitias and the Brian and the Charlene's, and we give each person, let's say, 15, 20 minutes, and we do a 2-hour training, and people come and share what they're doing. And I think that's practical training. It's not airy-fairy stuff that a guy writes at a university and he's researched it. So how about that we do that? And I said to Anneke, myself, will set it up not next week, in time to come. And then we ask people, so if you've got somebody that you really know who's good at this, who's had the experience, we set up a training session, and we ask these people to come and talk. Real people talking about real cases, not some airy-fairy stuff, because it's getting crucial. Thank you very, very much. Is that all right? There's some hand up there, Anthony. You happy?
Nico, I think that's a brilliant idea, and I think what really makes it what will make it very powerful, it's people that have done it. It's
Yes.
not somebody who's just thought about it and, you know, the theoretical side. It's guys that have actually physically done it and been involved and are currently doing it. So it can be extremely powerful.
I think so. And just to move off the subject matter a little bit, I had one of the very senior guys in industry phone me yesterday, and we were talking about the PDS system and all of that, you know. And that's another thing that we want to share, because I've been criticized for PDS, and I've got some people on this meeting that are very active in it and are doing excellently well, but people still don't understand it, and you know, telling me that, oh yeah, you guys are pushing for level 9 and all of this and so forth. So maybe that's something else that we need to have a training session on, and get 3 or 4 or 5 people to come and explain to us, because they don't understand it. So I'll put that up too. Now, unfortunately, the agenda which Anthony then developed and I had no say in says I'm going to talk about illegal mining. Anneke has got a document that's going to be very short. Anneke, don't you want to just share it with us? It's something that we sent out this week, and if you didn't get it, just ask Anneke to forward it to you. But this whole thing about illegal mining. Now, let me just quickly go back. We've been having this problem for many, many years. It's got worse and worse and worse. At the Minerals Council board meeting a week or so ago, it has been decided and been finalized that the Minerals Council is now going to appoint somebody in the Minerals Council as an employee at the level at least of a general. of the SAPs or one of those. Okay. So they're looking for somebody and they will interview them, and apparently they know quite a few guys that would want to do it. So that's the level we're going to now, is to get somebody who understands it and who's got contacts, who can say, well, they're illegally mining here, there, or wherever, and then get people stormed down. Why I'm showing you this circular is I get people that phone me and says, you know, Nico, they illegally mining here in Porfader, street number 4, on the way to so-and-so place, and I can do nothing with that. The guy who said, send me these photos.
Nico, your sound is gone.
I was out. And
Let's
Anneke,
try
can you
again.
hear me?
Yes, I can now.
Okay, so you just move it down a little bit. So what I'm trying to say is, when you complain about illegal mining, take pictures and put them together and send them to me. Anneke, what she did here is she put them in a ASPASA document. So we did not divulge the person or the company that complained to us. That's crucial. Otherwise, they come and harass you. So I think that's the whole situation that we're sitting with now. The important thing about this is that the illegal mining thing is not just one guy with a back actor digging out some sand in some river in Natal like we used to have. It's now, if you want to call it, consortiums of thieves that are doing this and bullying places. Let me have as much information as you can, pictures, counts, and then I put it in a document like this one, and then I send it. But when I send it all over. The Green Scorpions gets it. The DMR gets it. It doesn't only go to the regional DMR guy because they're scared to go. It goes right up to the top. The Minerals Council has sent this one to the minister. So that's the level we're going to have to fight this thing, because people are saying, oh, ASPASA can do nothing about illegal mining. We're not police. We haven't got the authority to go in there. Even the police are scared to go in there. The DMR doesn't go in there. I mean, they're scared because these guys threaten them with their lives. So papers have been carrying a lot of articles lately, and there's an article that was in Business Day or something last week. So please, that's all I want to say about illegal mining. Let me have all the facts, and then we will put them together and we will send them to where we find somebody happens. And at some stage, as I say, Minerals Council will also have this guy that works there at that level of at least a general. So I thought I just wanted to share that, because you all have that problem right throughout South Africa. It's quite scary. Thank you very much for that, Anneke. Then I'm finished with that. Any discussions or any comments that anybody would like to make, because we've got a thing on the agenda, general discussions and inputs. Any ideas, any questions, please shout. And if there's none, then we're going to close the meeting and we'll have the next one in due course. But there's a hand. Thanks, Charlene.
Nico, I'll commit to make a list of the very generic legal non-compliances if there's illegal mining. So, for example, non-compliance of activity 24, non-compliance of activity 21 in terms of the NPRDA. So that you can at least, when you call it illegal mining, it's illegal in terms of something specific, which then forces action. Because it's not illegal in the air. It's illegal because of non-compliance of something.
Yes, I think that's crucial, because when we send that on, your state prosecutors and your so forth, they actually don't know what to charge the people under. So I think that's crucial. If you would do that for me, that would be a big present. Thank you very, very much for that. And then also at some stage, we're going to ask you to help us look at this borrow pit story that, Sunroll believes they mining legally. We don't believe that. We had a legal opinion at one stage, and so forth, because they're digging all over, especially in Natal. So at some stage, I think we need to escalate this thing and tie it to the illegal thing. There's a comment there, Anthony.
Nico, you touched a point here, which is, I think, it affects every single operation, and that's the borrow pit side. It really, I think there are operations that have been really hurt by this borrow pit story of Sanral. Yeah, and if that can get resolved, it would be fantastic.
Thanks. Charlene?
Yeah, Nico, in terms of the latest change in the regulation, it's very clear. So it was an exemption previously. It no longer is an exemption. So under section 21D of NEMA, it is now a listed activity. So it's not a listed activity. Note, it's not a listed activity in terms of the MPRDA, but it is a listed activity in terms of NEMA.
You must let us have that maybe in some form of writing, so we can circulate that and also send it to the DMRE and of course to Sanral, because they don't like me. That's the word. Yeah, they don't like me because they say I don't understand why they're building roads. But anyway, while we've got a quarry 8 k's away. So any other comments? Thanks. That was great. Sure. We've had some very good discussions today, guys. It's fantastic to have these sessions. If not, if there's any other questions, any other issues, just email us and we'll share it with the people. And then I just must say thank you for that. And let's have a good day the rest of the day. Thank you for joining. Go well.
Thank you, Nico. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.